When visitors walk through the Early Years Gallery at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, they are greeted by the open-air tangle of bamboo, wood, and fabric known as the Curtiss 1911 Model D Type 4. This historic aircraft represents a pivotal moment in American aviation. It's a meticulous reproduction of the U.S. Army's second-ever airplane. Here's the story behind that aircraft, its tragic original story, and the museum's incredible effort to bring it back to life. In 1909, the U.S. Army bought its very first airplane from the Wright brothers. But it wasn't until March 1911 that Congress finally made its official appropriation for military aviation, granting the Army Signal Corps a budget of $125,000. With funding secured, the Army immediately ordered 5 new airplanes. The very first of this new batch to be delivered was the Curtiss Model D Type 4, designed by Glenn H. Curtiss, a motorcycle racer turned aviation pioneer and chief rival to the Wright brothers. The aircraft was accepted by the Army at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, on April 27, 1911. It was officially designated as Signal Corps Airplane No. 2. The Curtiss Model D was known as a pusher aircraft because its propeller was mounted behind the pilot, literally pushing the plane through the air rather than pulling it. Because the Army needed the aircraft to be highly mobile, this military version was designed to be quickly disassembled, packed onto a horse-drawn Army wagon, and transported to a new location and reassembled for flight. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Curtiss Model D was its highly unusual control system, which drew heavily on Curtiss's motorcycle racing background. The pilot operated the front elevator and the rear rudder using a steering wheel mounted on a column in front of them, pushing the wheel forward or backward, controlled pitch, while turning the wheel side to side, control rudder. To control the ailerons and thus roll the aircraft, the pilot wore a metal yoke around their shoulders. To bank the airplane, the pilot physically leaned the upper body in the direction they wanted to turn. Unlike the Wright aircraft of the era, where the pilot and observer were sat side by side, the Curtiss featured tandem seating, with the observer sitting directly behind the pilot and precariously close to the spinning propeller. With the arrival of Signal Corps 2 and other new aircraft, the Army began accepting volunteers for flight training. One of these volunteers was Lieutenant George E. M. Kelly. On May 10, 1911, just 2 weeks after the Curtiss Model D was accepted by the military, Lieutenant Kelly took off in Signal Corps Airplane No. 2 for his primary pilot qualification flight. Tragically, while attempting to land, Kelly crashed into the ground and he died from a fractured skull an hour later, becoming the first U.S. military aviator to lose his life in an airplane crash that he was piloting. Following the crash, flying activities at Fort Sam Houston were immediately halted, and the severely damaged Signal Corps Airplane No. 2 was eventually scrapped by the Army. Because the original aircraft no longer existed, the model you see in the museum today is a painstakingly crafted reproduction. Completed by museum personnel in 1987, the build was an incredible feat of reverse engineering. The museum did not have access to original blueprints or adequate written descriptions of the Model D. Instead, they relied heavily on measuring and scaling dimensions directly from early 1911 photographs of the original Signal Corps Airplane No. 2. They supplemented these photo measurements with data from the existing factory-built Curtiss pusher and modern structural drawings. The resulting reproduction is incredibly authentic. Except for the engine, every material used to build the airframe, from the wood to the fabric, is essentially the same as it was when Glenn Curtiss would have used it in 1911. Because an original working engine was not available or practical for the static display, museum craftsmen brilliantly recreated the 60 horsepower Curtiss V8 engine entirely out of wood and plastic, painting it to look exactly like the real thing. The story of Cylinder Core Airplane Number 2 is a perfect snapshot of early aviation. It was brilliant, incredibly dangerous, and unapologetically experimental. Glenn Curtiss didn't just build an airplane, he built a machine that forced the pilot to become one with the wings. Even though the original was lost to tragedy, the fact that the National Museum of the United States Air Force was able to reverse engineer this beautiful replica from grainy 1911 photographs is a testament on how much this history matters. It ensures that the sacrifices of early aviators like Lieutenant George Kelly are never forgotten. If you ever find yourself in Dayton, Ohio, you absolutely have to visit the Early Years Gallery at the museum to see this incredible piece of reverse engineering up close. Now I want to hear from you. Could you imagine trusting your life to a wooden airplane steered by your shoulders? Let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed this dive into aviation history. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Thanks for watching, and keep looking up.